Okay, so the object of this project is we're going to be doing miter joints. Miter joints are typically any two angles that equal 90 degrees. Typically they are 45 degrees each. Right? The whole object of a miter is that we don't see end grain, the end of the board, which is very ugly, and it gives us a lot more surface area and places for glue and fasteners. Right? Typically a miter is just like this. You don't see any end grain. It gives us more surface area for gluing, and obviously it gives us an easier way to nail or put screws or fasteners. Most picture frames all have miter joints in them. All right? There's 45-degree angles. You can cut them to any size. Obviously, you need two equal parts on the sides and the top, depending on the size of the photo. We're also going to be putting a small rabbet joint. Now, a rabbet joint is something we talked about in earlier lessons, where the backing material in the photo will actually sit in, and this will sit tight to the wall, so you won't see the backing material or anything. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how we're going to round over the fronts, and we're going to make that rabbet joint. We're going to do both of these with routers. All right. So our first step is we find our desired material that we want to use, and in this case we're using a piece of maple, and it's 2.5 inches wide by 3/4 inch thick. First step we're going to do is I'm going to use the Rabbeting Bit. Right, this is a router. It has a bearing on it. The bearing is going to travel on any smooth edge. So I'm going to take this, we're going to turn it on, and we're going to put our rabbet all the way down the length of this board. You guys might get a little dirty here. Thing, we're actually going to hook up the roundover bit. Roundover bit is very similar to the Rabbeting Bit, but this one just has a nice smooth quarter round look to it when we're done. We're going to router both sides. After we router it, it's kind of rough. You'll see some burn marks. We're obviously going to go do a little sanding before our next step. So we have our piece of maple that's already been routered with a rabbet joint and our two roundovers. And we're going to make a small 8x10 frame. First thing we're going to do is we're going to come over and inspect the saw and make sure everything is working properly, especially the guard. And I'm going to set my saw on 45 degrees. Remember, two 45-degree angles equal 90 degrees, which is our picture frame. So I'm going to make my first cut. And what I'm going to do is I want the rabbet is going to be on the inside of the frame. So I want to make sure that I'm cutting my angle in the right direction. Alright, so we made our first 45. What I'm going to do real fast is show you how we do our measurements though on a picture frame. I'm not going to go from the very out or inside edge or the outside edge. I'm actually going to go from the edge of that rabbet joint. So if we're going to do an 8x10 frame, because we want that 8x10 picture to sit within the frame, I want to use this mark right here. So I'm going to do a little technique called burning an inch, and I'm going to set it up on 1 inch, and I'm going to go to 9. And I'm going to make a little mark, and I want to make sure, and I always usually put an indicator mark that says the angle is going to go in that direction. Alright, so now it's going to get a little tricky here. I'm going to move my saw all the way in the other direction to 45, lock it in place. Make sure it's tight against the fence, and I want the blade to just come down on the scrap side of that line or that mark. I'm going to look right through here, and I'm going to slowly line this thing up. Once I have it positioned, I'm holding tight. Pieces are cut. We're going to start assembling. Obviously, I'm going to use a little bit of glue in every corner, and I'm going to use a nail gun to put it together. I always like to be generous with the glue. Now the trick to using a nail gun is to never have your fingers within reach of the nail. So I'm going to put it together nice and dry. My point to that is I always want my fingers or hands at least the distance or the sides of the nail away from what I'm shooting. Alright, so obviously let this dry, a little bit of sanding, and touch it up, a little bit of finish, and it's a nice picture frame. There's my rabbit. I've already cut a backing piece that would sit in there behind the photo. If you want, you can use a piece of thin glass